Welcome to His and Hers with Mico, our newest show of Live, Laugh, Talk. And Mico, how are you doing this evening?
I'm pretty good today. Pretty good. How about you?
Oh, I'm hanging on in here. I'm excited to have my voice back and be able to debate with you. So I feel 100% better.
Okay.
But you and I, we have our fun conversations, and I look forward to that. And it's just such a joy to be able to bring it to the people. They can hear how we talk and some of the subjects we talk about. So this is one that you had mentioned to me once before. We were talking about comedians and the very fact that nowadays that we have comedians being attacked on stage.
Mhm.
Back in the day, people used to go to a comedy show and would actually sit in the front row so they would be picked on, so that would be a topic that the comedian would come up with and say something to you about. That was fun back in the day.
Right.
But
Right.
nowadays, they used to even want to be roasted. Yeah, people wanted to have a roast. That was an honor. But now the question is, can comedians still talk about anything? Or should they be afraid of the audience or be afraid of being canceled? So, lately we'll start with the being attacked on stage.
Mhm.
Now, of course, I think the most infamous attack was, of course, Chris Rock and Will Smith. I think that one was, everybody knows, the whole world had
Yes.
an opportunity to see that live.
Yes. They picked the big
And
stage to do it on.
that was the biggest stage,
Mhm.
an international stage. And boy, once we saw it, for me, it was. I think the 5 second delay, so there was some editing that went on,
Uh huh.
but seconds later, it's coming out of other countries, coming out of France, coming out, and so it's on Twitter already unedited, and we get to hear everything
Mhm.
said, and
Yes.
wow. Oh, that was astonishing. That was a shocker for me. How did you, when you saw that initially, we're going to get into some of these other attacks too, but because everybody saw that, when you saw that, what was your first thought?
To be honest, I really didn't think it was real.
Right,
I was one of those
right.
people that I was like, "Oh, this is a little skit, something they threw in there, whatever." And then when Will went to cussing, I was like, "Oh." When I
Yeah.
saw him cussing, I was like, "Oh, this might be real. This might, real look like he really upset." And then I
It's
waited, before I made any real judgments. I waited to try to hear, everything that was going on. Try to
right.
hear both sides, all sides, what was going on. And I still was like, you know, we as a culture have gotten too soft. You know,
Right.
he didn't take it personally because he laughed. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And
At first.
he went off of his wife's emotions, and
Yes.
he says that that's not true, but it's obvious.
We all saw it. It's true,
Yes,
Will.
that
If you're
she,
listening, Will, it's true.
yeah, it's true. Yeah, he went off of her emotions, and it's just sad that now you can't. And it's crazy because Will is funny. He does all these funny things, and he's not a comedian per se, but goes around and he does all these comedic things
Yes, and
just to
has for
get a laugh.
years.
Yes, to get a laugh from people in general, family, friends, audience, whatever he's doing. And at one time, he was even trying to become a comedian. He was going with I think it was who was it? Do you know about that?
No, I'm not familiar about that.
He was talking to Dave Chappelle, I believe, trying to get with
Mm.
him and learning how to become a comedian. But of course, that got cut after all this happened. But for you to be going through all that, and I get, you felt like it was a personal attack or whatever, but and you trying to become a comedian too, that let you know it just ain't got too personal out here.
Well, see, for me, it took me way back,
Uh-huh.
because I'm a lot older than my audience. So when I saw it,
Mhm.
I immediately, because of the way Will moved his body, I knew that was real. like that was, when the comedic slaps, you just kind of just wave your hand or your arm. But he had this whole Ali stance, and it was almost a punch instead of a slap. I mean, the movement. I'm like, whoa, that was. But what took me back was that I remember when he won his award.
Mhm.
He was the first rap artist to win a Grammy.
Okay.
And it was Chris Rock that introduced him to the stage.
Oh wow.
So that's what went through my mind because I remember seeing that. And I remember the ill way that they did it because it wasn't even televised with the rest of the. We saw it later on, like you could watch it later on,
Right.
but it wasn't televised with the other awards. And it was just, to me, it was a slap in the face for hip hop.
Mm.
But I remember Chris Rock. Then I remember the episode on the Fresh Prince where Chris Rock had a dual role. He was supposed to be this entertainer, and then Will was supposed to take his sister out, and it was actually Chris Rock dressed like a woman who was the sister.
Mhm.
And there's these pictures of them behind the scenes, and where Will having this disgusting look at his face, and Chris all hugged up on him like he was gonna kiss him. So my mind went all the way back to that, and I'm thinking these two guys know each other well, like they're friends. That's what I'm thinking in my mind. Like, what happened? And I was sitting there thinking, whatever just happened couldn't have been about the joke. And, and,
Right.
and I know people may sit here and go, well, you don't talk about a man's wife. Well, I want to remind everyone of who he was talking about. If you mention Demi Moore, if you compare any woman to Demi Moore, that should be a compliment.
Mm.
Demi Moore is beautiful now. When G.I. Jane came out, she was unbelievably beautiful. Not that she isn't now, but then unbelievable.
Mhm.
Hair cut off in a movie and fatigues, and she's still stunningly gorgeous on screen.
Mhm.
And to say, well, you, let me know when G.I. Jane 2 come out. I'm sitting there going, where's the insult? Because if you compare me to Denzel Washington, I'm not offended. I'm not going to attack you. I promise. That's a handsome man.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting there thinking, well, what is the problem with that comment? Like, when I had gotten upset, then the other thing that affected me was, like you said at first, he laughed. The
Right.
camera goes to him, he's laughing, and he looks over at her, and she's
Mm.
rolling her eyes and all that. And,
Mhm.
and I'm sitting there like, man, and when you go to the Oscars or any of these award shows, you expect to be roasted. That's why they get comedians to do it.
Right. And you sit
Back
in
in the
the
day, it was
front.
Billy.
Sit in the front.
Yes, yes, you would sit it. That's what you do at a comedy show. If you want to get roasted, you sit in the front,
Mhm.
and that's what. And so the entertainers for years would come to the Oscars and other events to be roasted. So I was taken aback by it. I really was. You know, I can't say. I have to say I was surprised.
Mhm.
I was surprised and saddened. Because those are two people I grew up loving. Um, I mean, is there a bigger star than Will? I mean, we all saw him rise up. You know, we watched him get to this big star when he was a little tiny star. I don't know. It was saddening to me. It was a breakdown.
Yeah, it
But
was.
but we got to go before then. 2019, a comedian named Ron Vai was attacked on stage.
Mhm.
Okay, and then of course this happens. We all saw that on national TV, and since then, it's like it just became norm. So shortly after, Dave Chappelle was attacked on stage.
Mm.
I think that was in May. Before that, there was a comedian named Samson McCormick. He was in California at a casino, and he had headlined there many times. He was attacked on stage. It was in March of this year, of last year.
Mhm.
And then a lot of people probably know Craig Robinson, the comedian.
Mhm.
He was in Charlotte, and he's scheduled to perform, and somebody opened fire at the club, and they had to rush him out of there. But he was okay. Nothing happened. Fortunately to him, or anyone else for that sake, it was just some foolishness that had happened. But it's just becoming the norm. So, should comedians be afraid to really speak their mind? I know you and I, we were talking in our conversation, and I grew up loving stand-up comedy.
Mhm.
Um, and I used to love comedians like Richard Pryor
Yes, I was about to
because,
him.
right, who, but Richard could take dark situations and make them funny.
Mhm.
He was raised in a brothel. His father was a pimp. Somehow he made that humorous. So he would take darkness and turn it into humor.
Mhm.
And he did that with human life. And there were things that he said on stage that we probably couldn't say to each other, or I couldn't say on this show.
Mhm.
But he made it, we were in dark situations, especially when he was coming up as a comedian. We were segregated, we were this, that, and the other. And he could make even that humorous. And nobody attacked him. You know, yes, there may be people who feel a certain way. Maybe they feel the opposite way of that comedian. But can't we just feel something that we feel without having to go on attack if somebody says something?
Yeah, it's bad. I remember they had interviewed Billy Crystal, and he was saying, being a comedian is like, being in a minefield. You got to worry about what you say, who feelings you step on, if you're gonna get blown up or not.
Right.
It's
You
just
just
not
don't know what may come out of it.
right. It's not the same no more.
Back in the day, a comedian could step on stage, and if he wanted to talk about some issue that went on that was dark, we could just talk about it.
Mhm.
But not anymore. There were, yeah, I just think of what world we live in now, where somebody says something and I don't agree with it, that gives me the right to assault.
Right.
Yeah, I don't understand this world. And I'll tell you, I really love stand-up comedy to the point that I go to shows.
Hmm.
I've been to the improv, I've been to all those places. And I literally sit on the front row to get picked on. you know, I would sit there, just to hear what they say. And some of it could be absolutely, hilarious. I can't think of the rapper that has a haircut like mine. It's a young fella. I can't think of his name right now. It escapes me. I wish I could because it makes it even the joke even more funny. And I was at Tracy Morgan's show. I'm sitting there on like the second row. So Tracy Morgan has them put the lights on me, shining on me. And I'm just gonna say, little Yachty or somebody. It wasn't him. I'm just gonna say it so the joke. But he's like, shine a light right here. They put the light on me. It's like I want everybody to see Lil Yachty's daddy. You know, the whole crowd. I mean, everybody was laughing. I mean, it was hilarious because the person he mentioned, we had the same hairstyle. So I mean, it was hilarious. And my hair is gray, so all of a sudden I'm his daddy. And so it led there. I took a picture with him. We were backstage. He was was the coolest thing. Yeah, that's what I enjoy. I thought it was funny. The audience thought it was funny. By the end of the night, my food and everything was complimentary because he took care of everything, and I got a chance to meet him and all of this. It was a wonderful night. I didn't get mad and go, "Who are you? Who are you to say?"
Hmm. Yeah.
Because if that's the case, why are you on the front row?
Right. Right.
And I'm trying to think of who is the comedian who he used to cut up watermelons and vegetables and all this, and he would just smash them on stage, and people would have to wear
Oh,
garments.
yeah. I
Uh,
remember that. Yeah, I can't remember his name either, but
escapes me as well. But imagine you go to that show knowing that that's what's going to happen. You know he's
Mhm.
going to smash a watermelon. You know he's going to throw a squash. Stuff's going to be all over the place. So you wouldn't go there with your best clothes on and then get mad when he starts smashing stuff.
Right.
You know it's going to happen.
Mhm.
So that's the way I look at it with comedians. If you're at a show and you're at a live show that's an award show, I mean, prepare to be picked on.
Mm.
I mean, there was comedians actually before Chris Rock. We go back and watch the show that had said different things about him that night.
Right.
One comedian, she came out. She said she was talking about all the single men in the audience, and then she named Will Smith. She was like, "Yeah, I know you. I know y'all to allow things to happen."
Mhm.
He didn't get mad and slap her.
No, no, because it was personal. It was something deep rooted. You know,
Right,
I don't know what's going on between them. That's not really my business. But I think Will has been trying to fight that thug comedian persona for a long time. You know what I'm saying? Because he has
right.
a long standing love for Tupac. So, I think that was his one time to, you know, be the upstanding man and show that he could
But
been his wife, but he picked the wrong time. Maybe we don't
but
know what happened. Maybe they had an argument before the show, and she was telling him he wasn't a man or something. You know what I'm saying? You don't,
we don't know what happened.
you don't never defend me, and then Chris said something. He was like, oh, and she is not laughing. Let me make sure I let her know. But the
Right,
thing is, regardless of what was going on, personal and not, it should never have gotten that far because it's a joke and you're in public
right.
and it is for the audience. It wasn't personally for you.
No,
So
no.
it's just like people just take everything to heart now. Like you can't say nothing. Everything is just so touchy now.
Yes, everybody is the same way, and
Yeah.
I know in our conversation you was talking about just how soft people are. Like back in the day, we would give the winners, as you mentioned,
Right.
a trophy. What do we do today?
Everybody get the trophy. Look, you guys are great. Let me pat you on your back. I'm like, wait a minute now. It's a winner and a loser for a reason. Y'all took the word loser and just made it a horrible thing.
Right,
It's not
right.
necessarily that it's bad. That's your opportunity to look at what you did and you know what I'm saying,
Improve.
improve on that. Enhance the
W-
skills that you know you can enhance and try to maneuver around the ones that you can't, but you can make yourself better. If you if
Right.
if you don't tell somebody that they are not performing up to par, then how does that person know what to do to make themselves better? Then you're not making a better person of them.
There you go. And we're not saying you're a loser in life.
In
You just
life.
lost that game.
Right. A lot of
You
that
lost.
to have those losing moments, so so you can know what it is to win. But when you walk around and you can't tell a joke and you can't say nothing or play with somebody whenever everything is so sensitive, that's not good.
Not at all. We grew up actually playing the dozens. What people today call bullying, we used to do it for the fun of it. Yeah,
Right.
because if I called it bullying, I was bullied every day of my life. I mean, you got to understand, when I was 9, I wore a size 9 man shoe, and every year I wore my age. So
Mm,
you can imagine how big my feet looked and how awkward I looked. I'm 15 with a size 15 man shoe.
mm, mm, mm.
And so I got picked on every day, but I used to have my comebacks, because once you hear something all the time, then you start preparing your comebacks. It's kind of like, somebody telling somebody a fat joke. They already know it's coming, so they already prepared for the comeback.
Mhm.
And that was me. I was already prepared. So, it didn't bother me. I was expecting it. So, but nowadays, oh my God, that is bullying. You cannot say this. You cannot do. I'm like, that was called the dozens growing up. Everybody did that. I mean, when they got off you, they was on your mama and everybody else in your family.
Yeah, your mama.
You know,
Uh,
so that's that's the environment now that we live in. That now you can't make a joke, you can't say something humorous to somebody. There's somebody in the corner that's going to be super offended. Nobody can have any humor. I used to go back and watch these roasting shows that they used to do in Hollywood,
Mhm.
and the Rat Pack would have these. I mean, they would be the subject sometimes, and then sometimes they would be the ones doing the roast. And I mean, they would have these comedians come from all over the world, and their job was to attack the person that was in the audience. So I remember they had a roast for Ronald Reagan and and that was a thing to come out and just say something that make everybody laugh. And sometimes they wouldn't even roast the person that's being roasted. It might be somebody else on stage.
Mhm.
So I remember one comedian. That's what he was known for, and so he was Don Rickles was his name. And so Don Rickles was on stage. He came up after Emmanuel Lewis. So Emmanuel Lewis was, talking, and he's trying to say his little jokes about the president or whatever. And so, he goes back. And so Don Rickles comes on stage and he starts his monologue, and he looks back and see Emmanuel Lewis is still on stage. So he turns around to the audience, the microphone, and he's like, Sally Struthers, here's one of your kids that and for the audience who's not old enough, okay, they used to be, where you give a certain amount of your income per day to this organization so they can feed hungry kids
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
underprivileged children.
Mhm.
So he's like, here's one of your underprivileged children, basically. He's talking about Emmanuel Lewis,
Uh-huh.
and everybody's laughing. Could you today? Here's an elderly white man turn around to a young black man and say, here's an underprivileged child. Can y'all come get him?
No, you
You
sure
couldn't
can't.
imagine saying that now.
Mhm.
It would be all kind of groups getting together and protesting.
Yes.
It would be a
Yes.
mess.
Cause
It
this
would be a mess.
this cancel culture that we in,
Yeah, let's get into that. Let's talk about the cancel
yeah,
culture. Go ahead.
cancel culture, it is horrible. You can't blink. And I'm talking about everybody is on the verge of being canceled. Roseanne went. She was trying to. They were canceling her. She got canceled. I ain't gonna say she was canceled, but she came close to getting canceled. They didn't put her show up and everything over some stuff.
Oh, she got canceled.
Well, no,
She got canceled.
she has her own comedy special now, and it's doing well. And this Roseanne Barr canceled this. They just come back
Yeah.
with crazy stuff and just counter whatever's going on. And then
But they kicked her off her own show.
well, they kicked her
They
off the show, but she came up with another show.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
she had this one comedy special, but I'm talking about she had a sitcom that it was quite successful
Mhm.
that was on for years, and then it comes back. The revival of it comes back, and it's still been on for years, but it came back as Roseanne, and then she made that comment. We're not even gonna say because it's what she said, and she got so canceled that they changed the name of the show from Roseanne to the Connors, and then
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
killed her off of it.
Yeah.
She died. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
they do.
cancel culture is real. It's real.
It's real. They will. You know what I'm saying? Joe Rogan was another one.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. That was.
through it. Now
Oh,
he opened up his own comedy comedy club where he had
right,
people who get canceled can come to his club and do their own thing there.
right.
And he fought it because he was about to be done, but he fought it, so he's still relevant. Um,
And we talked about Roseanne and her revival show. Actually, all of these revival shows that came about. I
mhm,
mean, we've had probably the last 3 years of all these old shows that came back on TV, Murphy Brown and all these. All those shows came back because what was happening was the Cosby Show was coming back. It was going to bring the Cosby Show back on. We all know about Bill Cosby
right,
being canceled, and so that didn't happen. So all of a sudden, everybody and their uncle brought their show back on TV.
right, right.
You know, but you talk about canceled. Bill Cosby was canceled to the point that if it wasn't for the fight and the struggle, everybody on the Cosby Show was just about cancer.
Oh,
Like everybody was, and everybody had to come out like, "Whoa, wait a minute, I didn't do anything to anybody, and
mm-hmm.
why am I?" But there were individuals that weren't getting roles because of their past on the Cosby Show.
Yep, because of their past or because of how they felt or what they agreed or didn't agree with. And I feel like everybody's entitled to their opinion. Whether you like their opinion or not, or whether you agree with their
Exactly.
opinion or not, everybody is entitled to their opinion. And it just comes to the point where, you can't you can't do nothing. Like, oh goodness, Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle was on the verge of getting canceled with all the transphobic stuff he was saying.
I think Dave Chappelle doesn't care.
Oh,
He's probably the only
he
person
don't,
in the world.
but he was close. And I think because he didn't
Right.
care and he came back so strong, and he still told his jokes. He was like, "You're
And
not
he
gonna,
still did it.
right? You're not gonna make me not telling my jokes because I'm not doing anything wrong. Like you're taking it too far." And I think he did a good job. What I like about Dave is when he tells his jokes, it's so real to the real moment, and it's real life, and it's just funny how he says it because he's
He's the modern day Richard Pryor.
right. He is definitely saying exactly what he want to say. It's just funny how he says it. So you like, but he mean what he say when he say it.
Well,
He
he's thought provoking because
right.
he's so intelligent
Yes.
that he says things that you hadn't even in a way you hadn't even thought about it yet.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he's been that way since he was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always been that person who could just, make the whole room think. So there's some people that you're gonna have real trouble trying to cancel because their thought process is beyond where you are right now.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you catch up with him later on. Like it's just now I'm going back. It was in my 40s that I went back and I started looking at Richard Pryor comedy stand ups. I was, you know, so here they had been recorded in the 70s. Here I am, in the 2000s
Mm-hmm.
and going, wow, see, some of the stuff he said back then is relevant right now, most of it. And that's what we're going to do with Dave. We're going to go back and we're going to watch those shows. And we're going to go, man, this stuff he was talking about in 2020, and we're going to be in 2040 or something. Like, this is relevant now. And,
Right.
he's a tough cookie to crack. It's going to be hard to cancel somebody like him because he's so far advanced in his thinking.
Yes.
Um,
Hard. It's a new one out. He's from the Nick Cannon show. Wilding Out. His name is Matt Rife, and he's
right.
very controversial. He talk about you. He's one of those pick you out the audience. He start a conversation and he just say whatever come to mind. He talk about any and everything, and he was on the verge of being canceled, but he stuck to his guns too. I think it's about you just got to stick to it, and it's kind of being this cancel culture is like it's basically being bullied. If that's me,
That's true.
you bullying a person. You don't want to talk about it like that, but that's exactly what it is. You're bullying people that they can't think a certain way, they can't say certain things out loud, you know, and even when it's a joke. So where is and then if somebody does anything wrong from years ago, they get canceled. You know what I'm saying? You talk about they digging up tweets from like 10 years ago, and you don't even give a person growth. You know what I'm saying? Suppose that person was that way then, but now, you know what I'm saying, they've grown and now they have a better understanding, or they look at things differently now. Nobody is always the same. So I'm like, Dad, you don't even give, you know what I'm saying? Suppose like
So
things just have changed in their life. They haven't, maybe they were from a small farm or a small town, and then now they in this big town. So now, you know what I'm saying, it's a whole different culture thing to them, and they get integrated into things, and things are different. Like,
but you don't have a chance to grow when you're in
right,
the
you don't
public
have a
eye.
chance.
They just gonna go look at, oh, this is how he really
Right.
is. Which
If anything,
if that
it,
I'm sure I thought different 10, 20 years ago than I do
right.
now.
So it's like anything that you've done in your life, you stuck with it. You you stuck with it. Not only anything that you've done, to anything that you said, because they go back to tweets. It don't even matter if you tweeted it. If you replied to a tweet, they find it. I'd be like, wow. no,
Yeah.
because they didn't put this out there, but they replied to this, and I'm like, first of all, who are these people that are saving things from from 20 years ago and
Right.
looking for these things to bring back up about somebody? I remember watching my one of my favorite shows is The Flash on TV.
Right.
Oh, I can't even think his name. He played the stretchy guy, the stretchy character that you know he could stretch his arms and legs and do all of this stuff. And his
Hmm.
his character was Ralph on the show, and I thought he was just the greatest character. And I don't know that man personally; he might be whatever, but they went back years, and found some stuff that he put on the internet, and they took him off the show. And I just thought that was
Wow.
crazy. Like, so has he done anything recently? Like, I'm trying to, what I'm saying? Like, can you bring up something like in the past year, couple of years, 4 or 5 years? Like, you went back about 7, 8 years for this man. So I'm trying to figure
But
out, like, and he said, then and of course you around a whole different group of people or whatever. So maybe intertwining with other people, and then sometimes you don't know things after you sit down and talk to people. You get a better understanding of things, so your mindset is different. Like, you didn't do we know that this person is the same if you can't find nothing from way back then that he's what I'm saying, constantly doing. I'm just like, I don't know.
I
And
mean,
it's like
that almost happened to Mark Wahlberg. It went way back to when he
way
was a
back.
kid,
Yes, they
and
did
he,
him.
he said some. We know again, not we're not bringing up what's been said or whatever, but he said some very negative remarks.
Mm-hmm.
When he was a kid, like
A
literally a
kid.
teenager.
Yeah.
And then when the George Floyd incident came up, and he, stood in support of the protest, all of a sudden, well, you said back in, 1980, like
In
what?
33 AD. What? I wasn't even born yet. What are you talking about?
Oh my god! But that seems to be the thing with the cancel culture. Most of the time, it's nothing that just happened. It's something that was 15, 20, 25 years ago. So as
Right.
a person gets famous, and then all of a sudden we start digging and looking. We got to find something, and then we
Right.
find it, and here it is, everybody. This is what we found on them. They are such and such and so and so, and it's just horrible because you could do that with anyone. None of us are
None of
pure and
us.
innocent.
Because I know darn well people
Any
come back and find some stuff and be like, she, and I'd be like, well, you right. And I think that's the thing. The people who have, weathered the storm are the people who are like, okay, and we going to walk past that and keep it going. And that's not how that was. And I think the people that um kind of fall are the people that succumb to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh,
You're right.
oh, they found this out. What am I? No, you got to learn to fight back. You know what
Yeah, yeah. I mean, me, I would be that fight back person.
I'm
I'm not gonna lay down just because you said that I said or I did or whatever. I mean, and I'm very aware of the cancel culture,
saying?
um, and I'm not necessarily in favor of it. I can understand that some things we may need to be careful about saying. We may need to watch our mouth. That some things can offend other people
Mm-hmm.
severely. But then by the same token, I do realize that sometimes we go too far and we go too far back,
Right.
and so I remember that you and we've talked about this. There's a topic, and I'm not going to talk about it right now, that you and I, we've talked about bringing to this show. And I have said, you wrote it down weeks ago. And I have said, hmm, I'm not quite ready for that one yet. And the reason why I say that is because I know there's going to be a segment of even our audience
Mm,
that's fallen in love with us so far. And we bring that subject up, they're going to be like, oops.
yeah.
It might be the one that take us over the edge. We might be on 60 Minutes or something. It might be that one that,
Mm,
why did you say this? But but the subject matter is so true
it's
and it's so relevant. The question is anybody ready to hear it?
and that's
Because
the
one,
problem. Yep, that's the
right,
problem right there.
right. It's not that it's a lie or that it's
Mm-hmm.
slander or it's defamation. No, it's the truth. But once we put it on the air, it's gonna be some folks that just can't take it. They just like, whoa, wait a minute. You said what? Huh? And wow, the negative kickback that could come from it. I'm sitting here going, both of us ready for that yet. Why don't we wait till we get rich and famous and then be canceled?
It said then be canceled.
Give me the money first, then cancel me. I'm good. I can sit home and spend my money.
But then
But
how you said that, topics and things, and that's the same thing with comedians though. I think that the shows are so dry, they're not as, comedic as they used to be because they're answering what they want to say. And
yeah,
how
and that's sad. That's sad. What is a comedian that can't speak his heart?
right.
Yeah, that's sad. You can't do comedy if it's not real. You might be able to pull off anything else. You might be able to pull off music, whatever, but you cannot do stand up comedy if you're not coming from the heart. If it's not real, man, people ain't gonna laugh because
Yeah.
they can feel that.
Right. They can
Yeah.
feel all that. Dave Chappelle done talked about that. Chris Rock done talked about that. You just people are scared to especially in the comedic world where you're supposed to be able to talk about taboo things, where you're supposed to be able to cross the line. You can't do it anymore.
One of the greatest comedians of all time, Bernie Mac.
Mhm.
We praise him because he was bold and
Right.
he was innovative, and he would talk about things that was really held in the home, but he would say it on stage, and everybody could relate to it because we all been there. But if you took and Bernie Mac from his Kings of Comedy show, you
Mhm.
took that, they made a television show out of a sitcom.
Right.
It's actually great. I think stand up was great. I think the sitcom was great. But I go back now and I watch that sitcom on Hulu.
Mhm.
I that's what puts me to sleep. I'll turn it on. I can sit there and laugh till I fall asleep. But a lot of stuff said, and this show was maybe what 20 years ago. So maybe it was 2005. Might have been a little later than that.
Mhm.
And there's stuff said on that show then that you can't say now.
You can't say now.
You would be canceled immediately. Like spanking children.
Mm.
Yeah, like he's like, I slap you till all you can't say nor do any of
Nope.
that.
Don't do it.
Yeah, and the stuff that he said in the stand-up, relating to his nephew and others.
Mhm.
Can't say none of that. Absolutely. You got to keep evolving with the times. I do understand that, but I think that we've lost humor as a culture now. We can't even be funny because we're so afraid that somebody's going to be offended. And even in my personal life, I've made jokes. I've said some stuff that was just to me was funny,
Mhm.
and I said it to a person, and he was like, maybe you could have worded that different. That's the last time I ever talked to that person.
Mm.
Now I can imagine if I was a comedian, how I would feel. But if I'm talking and I'm laughing and I'm having a good time, and you censoring me, then
Right.
we don't need we can't. What we gonna talk about?
Because
Because
you
I
know
like to be
what? People will take sound bites out of out of your conversation instead of the whole conversation. And they
right,
will hear just that little bit. Be like, you didn't hear the whole conversation we just had, or you didn't hear the whole joke. You just heard that one little bit in there.
right,
I'm gonna need you to get the whole entire joke and not just
exactly.
hear that one little bit and then you upset.
And I come from a very comedic family.
Mhm.
My mom quick with it, and everybody in my family quick with it. So we may say things and joke and jive that we don't really mean it like that. We were just joking.
Right.
But like I said, if I'm talking to you, we having a good time, and I say something, you got to censor me, then we won't be talking no more. Because like you say, I don't need you to take bits and pieces of what I said and then make it sound like, you know. Mm-mm. But so I can imagine what these people who have a national audience must feel like.
Yeah.
It must be off, because that's their art, that's their craft,
Mhm.
and most of them, if they didn't do that, what would they be doing?
Right.
Like what would Roseanne be doing?
Mm.
You know, she's she's not gonna go work in somebody's office. I mean,
Nope.
what is she gonna do? that's who she is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and again saying this, I'm not just I don't want anybody writing in on the show and who are you justifying? I'm not justifying what Roseanne said. That's not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
I'm just saying that once if we're gonna go around, we're gonna start censoring everybody, and we're gonna start. It's just like the debate about books. Should we go in the library and just start taking books out and burning them?
Mhm.
Because all of a sudden you can't say what was in Tom Sawyer anymore, so we got to go burn that book.
Right.
You know, well, we're going to do the same thing with comedians. We're going to go attack them all. We're going to censor them all. We're going to keep them off TV.
Mhm.
I mean, it's got to be a limit to some of this. But if it's going to, in my eyes, to be honest with you, Miko, it's going to get worse
Mhm. Mhm.
before it gets better
Yeah.
because it has. I mean, it started seems like a little bit ago, but now, especially after we sat here and we just started listing the different people and the different shows, and we ain't even got to half of them. Man, it's it's astonishing that you can't say anything, do anything, and the fact that people go back decades into your life,
Mhm. Yes, that's the sad part.
and all these accusations and stuff that come about. And I know I did a segment on how did we get here last week on false accusations. Uh, but they're deadly. They're entertainers who have been someone said they did, and then all of a sudden, as you mentioned, they got kicked off a show. I know, and then everybody on the show had to make a statement like, "I stand with the accuser,"
Mhm.
and they would come to find out the accuser was lying. Now what?
Right.
This
Right.
person lost their show, their reputation. They show up on other shows or whatever, and people are still believing that they said or did what was told happened. It wasn't the truth.
Mhm.
So it sullies a person's reputation for life. I just don't agree with that. That's what makes cancel culture something that I don't go, because who's to say that what we're talking about actually happened, or as you mentioned in the gentleman on the other show, it was so long ago he may have changed his views by now.
Mhm.
And I would hope he has, because I know that I've been around decades. I don't think the same way I did when I was 21, 31 even.
Right.
So it's a mixed up world. Yeah, I hate that this is happening in the world of comedy, and maybe another time we'll get into how we see it happening in the music industry.
Mhm.
How we're seeing entertainers being attacked at their concerts, people throwing bottles and phones, and wow, I can't even imagine. I I I can't. I just what's going to be the future. The future is going to be our entertainers going to have to perform on Zoom or something because they're going to be too scared to come to an arena.
Right. Right.
So we'll have to save that one for another day.
Mm.
But we definitely enjoy having you with us. I wish you got to come on in one of the episodes during the week and just co-host the whole show with me. I
Okay.
think that would be fun.
So we can
And
do that.
we need to do that one day so that we can even on that show then advertise our this show so that more people get to know about it. But we definitely enjoy you and your insight, your input. And I have gotten from you have fans out there that seem to be male that keep speaking of your beautiful voice. She has such a beautiful voice. That's what happens on my admin at Live Laugh Talk comment page is your beautiful voice. So you just keep turning on the male listeners out there, Miko. We we
Oh,
appreciate that.
you sure
So we're gonna let
so
you
that's not
go.
your dad? Look,
You says who?
I said, you sure that's not your dad?
Dad's one of your fans. Dad, you done called him out. And I know he gonna be listening. He is definitely one of your fans. So
Okay.
yeah, Dad has written in as well. Yeah, and he writes. You probably noticed on the Spotify page, he's always commenting. So yes, Dad's a big fan of Miko. So so we gotta keep Miko around, and we gotta get Dad on the show too. Like
Yeah.
you had mentioned that, but we'll have Dad on with you and me
We
because
gonna have
he
that's
he
your big
has his
dog.
opinion.
We're gonna have dad on the show.
We
Next,
gotta do it.
I think we
That
should do that. I think we should do it next week. That should be.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do that. That would be exciting.
Mm,
That would be awesome. So, not gonna keep you any longer. I know you've got a busy life outside of all of this,
yeah.
and it's a joy to talk about this subject as well as many others. And so, is there anything that you want to say on the way out? I want to just conclude without you having an
Oh,
opportunity.
good. I think we talked about pretty much all we needed to talk about. It's just amazing to watch and hear all this with the cancel culture and the comedians not being able to really be them true selves anymore on stage. So I'm hoping for a change. Like you said, it might not happen too soon, but I would hope for sooner rather than later.
I would too. I would hope for the time when everybody gets back to wanting to sit on the front row and be picked on by Bernie Mac and,
Mm,
and other comedians over the years. It's a sad world when we can't laugh anymore.
yeah.
But anyway, that brings us to the end of our show.
Uh-huh.
So, Miko, go ahead and tell everybody good night, Miko.
Good night, Mico.